What's up, everybody? And today we're reacting to India versus China. Who would win? Army/military comparison. This is by the Infographic Show. I've watched some of their stuff in the past. You should definitely check it out. This is a very interesting one because I've never really thought about the tensions between the two countries. But since I've been doing more Indian-style videos with the Indian military and even some Hindu stuff, I've started to notice some chatter about how the border's kind of a bit iffy and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm interested to see what this is all about, if I'm honest with you. This video is 14 minutes long, so bear with it. Obviously, we'll pause it every now and again, chat about it, and there'll be a link down below to the original video. Also in the description, there will also be a link to DREADNOUGHT MEADERY. Please check that out if you can. Anything else I need to say before we get started? I don't think there is. So let's shut up, let's pull this up, and let's have some fun and learn some stuff.
In mid-June 2020, World War III started trending on Twitter again. This time it was because a border dispute in the Himalayas between Chinese and Indian forces turned deadly, killing upward of 20 people. This is the first time since 1975 that the two countries have had a fatal conflict, and the most serious skirmish since 1967. Naturally, as the two nations are populous, militarily powerful, and have nuclear capabilities, the world is biting its nails to see what happens next. But assuming the whole thing doesn't end in...
It's interesting as a Brit that I didn't know about this. As a former Royal Marines commando, I didn't know about the tension between the two countries, which is ironic because I'm pretty sure if India kicked off, Britain would be there to help them. I'm almost certain that would be the case, although who knows these days. The West is very finicky when it comes to helping people who are not inside NATO, so I'm not too sure. But with it being against China as well, that would be very weird with America probably trying to help India and stuff. So I'm surprised I don't know much about this, to be honest with you.
In diplomacy,
A couple years old, this video as well, so just bear that in mind. If he throws out any statistics, just bear that in mind as well.
about dust for assistance.
Interesting. That is interesting, considering I know the tensions between China and America are on a very... they're on a knife's edge. So I'm wondering if anything's... like, if it was a border with a different country, would America come have helped India? Do you know what I mean? Or was it because it's against China that India turned to America and said, would you help us? That's a very interesting bit of information there.
Ultimately, none of it did all that much good, as China claimed the Eastern Theater up to the line of actual control before declaring a unilateral ceasefire. India was left to lick its wounds, and tensions between the two countries have been high ever since, with conflicts still breaking out well into the 70s. Both nations have ramped up militarization around the line.
Yeah, I'm wondering how that would have panned out if it was today. You know what I mean?
India has been engaged China is ranked as having the highest number of active military personnel in the world.
Why does it look like they've got SA-80s? That's what it looks like, doesn't it?
At 2,035,000,
Woo!
China's military has numerical superiority over literally everyone, with over 500,000 reserve personnel who could be easily called into action in a wartime scenario. China is a force to be reckoned with. India, however,
They certainly are, but let's not overestimate underestimate the quality over quantity. Do you know what I mean? We know for a fact that British soldiers, which are low in numbers but incredibly high in quality, can hold their own against quite a lot of countries, right? And I've watched some videos from Indian military, like the special forces. Quality over quantity is a big thing. I don't know much about the quality of Chinese soldiers, but just because they've got a lot of them doesn't make them better.
isn't all that far behind, with 1,237,117 active personnel and an impressive 960,000 reserve personnel, putting the difference between their totals in the mere hundred thousands. But here's the big twist. The numbers here only pertain to the Indian Army, which is the ground force branch of the Indian Armed Forces. Only 5 years old, it's safe to assume that it's likely the smallest branch of the PLA. However, we also
It makes, yeah, again, the numbers are so, they're not that significant as they used to be, right? We're not going into combat with swords and shields anymore. This is something that, and although weapons as well, like, obviously, assault rifles and stuff, but it doesn't really matter as much anymore. If you watched my video yesterday about the USA versus the Russian mercenaries, the Wagner, American lads didn't even get boots on the ground. It was all from a distance. It was all about knowledge and strategic and power more than it was numbers of people. So, we'll see.
also have a far wider trend to consider here. The fact that China and India are two of the most populous nations on Earth, with populations of 1.393 billion and 1.353 billion respectively, as of 2018. In a situation of all-out war over their shared border, if both nations introduced conscription, the numerical differences between their armies would ultimately be nebulous. So, if neither army would have an extreme numerical edge in the case of another conflict, let's zoom in and take a look at the average military service member in each infantry.
I honestly feel like if it did kick off between the two, India would get so much help from the Western world, like Britain and America, just like how Ukraine and Russia are fighting. Ukraine's getting an ungodly amount of help, and look how small Ukraine is. Imagine if it was India that already has this massive GDP and amount of people, and then all of a sudden you're adding that extra push from the Western countries.
Specifically, their
Again, quality over quantity.
They're formidable in the rifle department with the QBZ-95-1, a reliable bullpup rifle which performs best at long range. However, despite China being one of the world's most prolific exporters of body armor, it hasn't historically fitted its troops with that same standard of protection.
At the same time, though, I feel like if China went to war, they would certainly change their direction of where their stuff is being sold. You know what I mean?
The PLA is notorious for its light loadout, often leaving soldiers ill-prepared for taking fire, and giving the Indian infantry troops a huge comparative advantage. However, this may change in the not-too-distant future. According to a report from Global Times, China is investing heavily in updating and modernizing its training system, as well as planning on procuring 1.4 million units of high-quality body armor for the PLA. While this isn't currently a certainty, if these plans do go through, any advantages that the Indian Army may have had on an individual soldier level would essentially evaporate, leaving them dead even once again. But these days, war is far more complex than a large group of armed men running at each other and fighting down to the last one standing. In modern warfare, technology can give militaries the crucial edge they need to secure a victory over the enemy. Since 2008, China and India have ranked second and third, respectively, in global military spending. But the
Ooh, that's a lot between the two if they went and kicked off, innit? That's a lot.
gap between them is
Still a lot of money. I mean, it's no America. It's still a lot of money.
1 billion. This disparity becomes a little more natural when you
Again, before we carry on, remember this video is a couple years old, so that could be the numbers could be way different now.
realize that China's economy
Still be a bloodbath though, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
has approximately double the fighter and interceptor jets and 507 workable airports compared to India's 346. Once again, sadly for India, this trend continues into the country's navies. In terms of total naval assets, China outnumbers India by 777 to 285.
Whoa.
More specifically, it has 74 submarines to India's 16, 36 destroyers to India's 11, and if wars were decided on equipment alone, it's unquestionable that China would take the win here. Of course, while nobody on Earth wants the conflict to escalate to this point for the sake of all human life, we'd be remiss to not return to the fact that China and India are both nuclear nations.
Yeah.
If the war ever did become an exchange of nuclear force, who would come out on top?
I feel like China are definitely the one. China and Russia are the ones that would like defo throw nukes if things kicked off, wouldn't they? Like, I always get worried that Russia and Ukraine, because Russia are not doing so good, that Russia are just going to be like, fuck it, let's send a nuke, which is terrifying.
Well, for a number of reasons.
They wouldn't. They would have Pakistan. They would have potentially Russia with them. They would have a handful of countries with them.
Pakistan, a country with
Iran, maybe.
relationships with India, to say the least. India itself has been building diplomatic relationships with a number of extremely valuable allies. These include the United States, a country with the highest military spending in the world, who under President Trump have gone cold on relations with China while referring to India as a major defense partner. India has also developed strong diplomatic ties to Japan, France, and Australia through performing a number of joint military drills with all of them.
And the UK.
Having these various world powers behind them gives India a
Although it doesn't mention the UK as a world power anymore, which is kind of scary, isn't it?
serious combat edge over China, providing these allies come to India's side in their time of need. While the US could be India's greatest ally in this speculative war, foreign policy under President Trump has been known to be capricious and unreliable to other allies.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this video is a couple years old, so that's not the stance anymore, I'm sure.
Such as the Kurdish forces.
China has no intentions of going to war with India. It would be a losing game. Firstly, it would turn into World War III 100%. Secondly, they would lose anyway.
Industry both. India would simply have to fight defensively, as the terrain separating India and China is extremely difficult and well suited to defensive warfare. While the Chinese could crush any Indian incursion into China itself, and there'd be few strategic targets to take close to the Indian border anyway, a war between the two nations would inevitably see India the winner, as it slowly strangles Chinese trade to death. Check out American.
That was a really good video. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Again, this video is a couple years old, so it's a little bit different, and we have a little bit different stats. Maybe I could try and find a better video with more stats in it. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. There'll be a link to the original video in the description. Go check that out. Give it a like and subscribe. Give my video a like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. And that's pretty much it. Check out Dreadnought Meadery in my description if you want to see more fun stuff with me and my brother. Other than that, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.